When we've got our team together and we know where we want to go, the next thing to do is to consult a few resources that are going to give us some information about which rivers in the area are going to be available at the time, what the water levels of them are going to be, and what difficulty they're going to be.
We have so many resources that we can draw upon as a kayaker these days. One of the first things I'll go to look at if I'm thinking about going paddling is a river app. This is an app that will pull in information from gauges on rivers around the area and display it in a way that I can look at to see if any rivers are in low water, medium water or high water in my surrounding area. I can also go to this app to find out more information about the grade of rivers and also some up-to-date information about anything that's been reported on that river. So these are just an incredible resource that we can use as kayakers. So if we have a look at the graph that's created by the gauge information on a river app, we can get quite a lot of information about our river. If you notice that the peaks are quite abrupt and the water levels seem to go up very quickly and drop off very quickly, you can get an idea that this is a river that reacts very quickly to rainfall. So we can expect that if we're on the river and the rivers are high, that if it's not raining, it's going to be dropping off really quickly. And also we can expect that if we're on the water and it's raining heavily, you could expect that actually that will change the water levels whilst we're on the water. So it's really key information really to know if a river is the one that can come up and drop off really quickly. And you can tell that just by looking at the historical information on the graph and seeing if there are these peaks that happen and see how long it takes for the water levels to drop after it's rained. In contrast to this, you might find that some rivers drop off really slowly or increase really slowly. So these are more mature rivers that are often bigger volume rivers that are further down from the mountains and will react and change differently to rainfall. It's affected by rain further up away from where the gauge is, and therefore it takes a while for the water to get into the river, and therefore there's a bit of a delay and it can just then be a real slow increase or decrease in water level. Another thing you can look for is daily cycles in the water levels. This is an indication that the water is fed by either snow melt or glacial melt. As you can see here, we've got a lovely curve that happens on a daily basis as the atmosphere heats up, as the snow starts to melt, the water flows into the river and the river levels rise, and then overnight the river levels drop. This is so key. If you find yourself looking at a graph that's doing this, then you can try to predict that the water levels are going to be increasing throughout the morning into the middle of the afternoon, and then they'll be dropping off after that. Obviously, if you have any rainfall on top of this, that can change it, but if there is a clear day, a hot day, then you can expect the water levels to get higher. If it's a cloudy, dull, colder day, then the water levels won't increase as much. Another key resource we need to look at as whitewater paddlers are weather forecasting apps, and particularly looking at the precipitation forecasts, seeing how much rainfall there's forecast for the time period where we're looking at going paddling. That'll help us try to predict if the river levels are going to be going up or going to be high when we get to the water. The gauge is going to give us that up-to-date information when we're deciding to go in the morning or on the day, but actually we might need to plan further in advance, so we'll be looking at the forecasting apps to be able to give us a bit of information about what's coming in terms of rain. Key things to look for here is that we could get a spot forecast for rain. So we know we're going to go to a river that's near a particular town, we look at the forecast for precipitation for that town, and then we can see how much rain's forecast. However, that's just for one spot, and actually the catchment for that river might be further away. So it's really helpful to look at a map or an area forecast for precipitation to see what's expected to cover the main sort of catchment area for the river. That way you'll get a bit more of an idea of what amount of water is going to be landing and ending up in the river. Now this is something you have to come back to regularly and reference back to the gauges and the app so that you build up a bit of an understanding of what is likely to happen to the river based on different forecasts. And this comes with time and just looking at the forecast and keeping an eye on a river. You don't have to be going paddling to get good at this. You can just simply regularly look at the forecast, try to predict what the water level is going to go up to, then look at the gauges and see if it gets there. It's a great exercise to do to try and increase your knowledge and experience and predictions on water levels for the rivers that you normally paddle.
For rivers that are fed by snowmelt and glacial melt, it's important to look at the temperature forecast for the coming days to be able to predict if there's going to be water in the river. The key information is actually the temperature at the elevation of the snowpack. Knowing if it's below zero or above zero makes a big difference to the amount of water that will end up in the rivers. A really helpful piece of information is that when you increase in altitude by 100 meters, the temperature drops by 1 degree C. This is a real generalization, but it can help to predict what the temperature is going to be like higher up at the snow level.
Another resource that we can use are guidebooks. Less so these days with all the amazing river apps and different information you can get online, but a guidebook is still a really good resource. It's great to flick through and to see the grades of the rivers, pictures of the rivers, information about where the get-ons are, where the get-offs are, and where perhaps there might need to be portages. Lots of really detailed information specifically written for kayakers. So these are still a really good resource. The downsides of these are that they're not up to date generally. So there's no way of getting up to date information about maybe some hazards, maybe there's been a flood, there's been changes to the river. So it's important to look at when the guidebook was produced to understand how recent it was. If it was 10, 15 years ago, there could be some major changes to that river in that time period. Another key resource is talking to local paddlers. There's no real substitute for this. Just talking to people that paddle rivers regularly, know the river, know what it's like at certain water levels, getting information from them is really, really helpful. So joining a local club or getting into groups of paddlers and meeting up regularly and just discussing and getting information from them about the rivers that you intend to paddle. You could also talk to local businesses in the area where you're paddling and look at booking in guides that know the river well and understand the different features and forecasts and what a river might be like at different levels and give you advice on where to go and where's going to be good. Something else we may need to look at for some rivers is a map. To understand that if we have any difficulties, where our escape routes are, where the nearest access road might be. So this is just looking at local maps and zooming in, maybe even Google Earth, to try and get an understanding of how remote a river is going to be and perhaps how easy it would be if you had to come off the river halfway down a section, how easy it would be to get back to your vehicle and back to civilization. Another thing you can add into the resource is just simply using your eyes and scouting a river. There's nothing better than actually getting eyes on the water, seeing what the water level's like, and also looking at the rapids and scouting a section before you paddle it.
Once you've decided where you're going to go, it's worth making a little prediction about what the water levels are going to be, how difficult it's going to be for your team, and what sort of conditions you're expecting to see when you arrive at the put-in. The next thing is when you get to the put-in, double check what it looks like versus what you thought it should look like. Is your plan still the right thing for your team?
So it's now time to move on to the next section of the course where we're going to look at reading the river from your kayak.
Alright, now I've found a marker on the bottom left. Important to fire now. Not my fucking best line, but there we go.